and welcome to today's webinar and financial scan demo. My name is Scott Menzel, and I'm a product manager here at GuideStar. Before we get started, I've got just a few housekeeping items for you. First, we're going to be live tweeting during today's presentation using the hashtag #FinancialScan, so please join the conversation on Twitter. Secondly, we are happy to take questions from all of you during the presentation. We'll try to answer as many as we can before our time is up. To submit a question, you can use the Q&A feature on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If we can't get to all of your questions today, we'll post more of the answers on the GuideStar blog at trust.guidestar.org soon after this webinar. And finally, we'll send all of you an email with a link to the presentation and today's recording within a few days. I'm now happy to introduce Peter Kramer, a National Advisory Services Manager at Nonprofit Finance Fund. Peter serves on NFF's National Consulting Team, supporting product development efforts and service delivery associated with their national initiatives and partnerships. Peter, take it away.
This afternoon. Thanks, Scott, and thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon to learn about Financial Scan. Many of you may know Nonprofit Finance Fund and GuideStar, but a quick introduction. NFF has more than 30 years of experience providing capital and to nonprofit organizations, as well as advisory services on the topic of strategic finance. And GuideStar, as most, if not all of you know, is the leader in nonprofit data with the largest publicly available data set in the nonprofit sector. NFF and GuideStar came together leveraging our respective strengths in deep analysis and data access to build an online financial data platform that could help make 990 information more meaningful for the nonprofit leaders, funders, and advisors who use it. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So for the next 30 minutes, I'll start with some important background information about Financial Scan, how organizations are using it, and then we'll run a live demonstration of the analysis in action. I will try to save a few minutes for questions at the end, so do, as Scott mentioned, use the chat box to send your questions our way. To begin, it's probably not surprising, given the background I just provided about NFF's experience in finance and GuideStar's in data, that we believe that financial health provides a foundation on which healthy nonprofit enterprises can be built to deliver high-quality programs that reflect an organization's mission and ultimately provide solutions to individuals and communities in need. Good, clear financial data leads to better and more informed decision-making about how our organizations operate and deliver services. And Financial Scan can play a role, can contribute to financial health by providing a clear and comprehensive set of information, as well as a guide for interpreting that data, helping to demystify some of the complexities of nonprofit finance. Moreover, it provides an accessible and common format that allows nonprofit leaders to engage with their staff, their boards, advisors, and funders in conversations about the recent financial past and future resource needs. But that graphic that we just looked at is the ideal format. That's what we as a sector often aspire to, but there are challenges within our sector as well. Nonprofit accounting is complex. There's a need inherent for subsidy from third-party payers, which complicates the way that money moves and that business models function in our sector. Not to mention the fact that the complex nature of the problems we're collectively working to address is just so great. All of these factors and others can create barriers to making the connection between organizational financial health and then effective solutions, and to making that table that we just looked at a reality. At NFF, we take a financial angle on strategic issues, and these listed here on the slide are some of the challenges that we hear and see from our client work across the country. So starting with the first bullet, throughout the sector there has been much focus on one-size-fits-all metrics like overhead, rather than the quote-unquote vital signs of financial health. And actually, we're starting to see some shifts among the funder and intermediary communities away from overhead as that one-size-fits-all measure, including, of course, GuideStar's recent role in the campaign to debunk the overhead myth. It's something that we agree with at NFF and something that we've advocated for many years, and instead want to focus nonprofit leaders and their funders and advisors on the leading indicators of comprehensive financial health. Nonprofits actually need profits in order to survive and thrive, so we need a more comprehensive look at an organization's entire financial picture, including looking at things like profitability and liquidity and the overall composition and health of an organization's balance sheet. With regard to the second bullet, in client engagements, presentations, and conversations with nonprofit leaders, I regularly hear from smart, passionate people who, when we talk about finance, might excuse themselves from the conversation as not being a finance person or being more program-oriented. And many people in the nonprofit sector are passionate champions of their respective causes, and rightly so. But they might not have that financial background or experience to help them navigate matters of strategic finance. But rather than fearing finance, we should really own it. It's necessary in order to advance mission, and a more practiced and nuanced understanding of finance helps us make more informed decisions about strategy and programs. And lastly, there's often some discomfort just in general about discussing money with others. And this can be internally with staff, this can be with board members, or with nonprofit clients if you're an advisor, or with our funders in the grantor-grantee dialogue. In fact, NFF annually conducts a State of the Sector survey, and the results for this year's survey are recently published. And we had nearly 5,000 respondents, or excuse me, more than 5,000 respondents this year, who shared with us their voices and their perspective on the current state of the sector. In the survey, one of the questions we ask is about comfort level in discussing financial matters with funders. And the data shows that many financial topics feel uncomfortable between nonprofits and funders. And in fact, some of the riskiest financial issues or riskiest financial behaviors are some of the ones that we feel more comfortable talking about, things like growth and change, but some of the things that are in fact more fundamental to health, things like appropriate capitalization and unrestricted operating funds, are some of those that there's the greatest amount of discomfort around. Knowing what to communicate about your organization's financial story and how to do that can be a real challenge, not to mention connecting that recent past to current resource needs. So we've designed Financial Scan with these issues in mind, knowing what to look at and what to measure, and to provide clear reporting analyses that are easy to interpret and can help to provide some of that common language and a clear reference point for financial conversations among all stakeholders in the nonprofit sector. So what is it? Financial Scan is a data platform developed by NFF and GuideStar. And at NFF, we've been underwriting nonprofit loans and advising organizations for a long time. And so combining our expertise with GuideStar's unmatched access to data provided this opportunity to design Financial Scan in a way that could make the most out of what the Form 990 can offer by taking what can be an unintuitive compliance document and applying an analytical filter to the data to make it more accessible and more useful for funders, for nonprofits, for advisors to the sector. Financial Scan as a data platform lives on GuideStar's website and automatically pulls 990 data for reports with just a few clicks. It is designed to give a multi-year perspective on nonprofit financial health, as well as the opportunity for a side-by-side peer comparisons. It's important to note that the Financial Scan reports are currently only able to pull data from the regular Form 990, not the 990EZ or 990PF. As of 2010, nonprofits may file a Form 990EZ if they have less than $250,000 in revenue. That said, even though there are some limitations around who is filling out the forms, the universe of organizations available for Financial Scan is made up of more than 350,000 nonprofit organizations. So the EZ and the PF, which are both different formats, they're completely different documents with different fields, do not match the data fields in the Form 990 and are therefore not available for the financial scan analyses. But we'll see that quite a few organizations do have data that's available to look at as well. The other piece to note is that Financial Scan is a paid service, and there are two ways for organizations to access the analyses. First, the Nonprofit Express Pass is designed for nonprofit organizations who might only need to run a report on their organization every 12 months or as frequently as the data would be updated. The Express Pass access costs $250, and that provides access over a 7-day period and allows the user to run a report on a single organization. So you can run the report and look at your organization, at a client organization, and also you have the ability to benchmark that organization with an unlimited number of peers. You can run an unlimited amount of peer comparisons during that 7-day period, but the target organization of the analysis always remains the same with the Nonprofit Express Pass. On the other side, we have annual subscriptions that are intended for funders or consultants or institutions who might want to run many reports over the course of a year. An annual subscription costs $2,500 and provides unlimited reports. That's $2,500 per user for an annual unlimited access to Financial Scan. The other access option that we've developed, I'll speak a little bit more about in a minute, is for enterprise licenses in the case where organizations might have many different users who would need to be able to have Financial Scan access and potentially simultaneously, in which case we have another option that I'll talk about in just a minute. So given this information about who it's for, what it is, how it works, let's take a look at what's actually in the report. So at a high level, we'll see it in just a few minutes looking on the online interface, but it is comprised of three major components. First, the organizational dashboard, which gives that trend analysis, a multi-year perspective showing up to 5 years of key financial trends and ratios across the income statement and the balance sheet. The next component are the graphs and explanatory text. Here you can see a more detailed and more visual picture of some of the different dynamics across these 5 different categories: expenses, revenue, profitability, the balance sheet, and liquidity. And the final component is the peer comparison dashboard. There are 2 different ways that users can select peer organizations. One, individual peers for side-by-side comparison, and the other as a subsector or group comparison, and we'll demonstrate both in just a few minutes. I'll note too that the organizational dashboard and the peer comparison dashboard, so both dashboards are available both in the online interface and in the final PDF report. The graphs and explanatory text are a component only of the final PDF report, and we'll take a look at that in just a few minutes. So before we dive into the demonstration and talking about a couple of new features that I want to mention, I want to just also highlight how different kinds of users are getting value out of Financial Scan currently. So nonprofit users tell us that they're using Financial Scan reports to engage different stakeholders in conversations about their recent dynamics and their current needs in terms of resources. So having a conversation that's grounded in data. They're also using Financial Scan reports to provide some historical context for their decisions and planning in things like the annual budgeting process or in doing a look back in a strategic planning process. And finally, it also can be a helpful tool when trying to get a sense of the landscape and the environment, understanding what kind of different choices other nonprofit peers have made, whether they're in our geography or in our particular issue area, or getting a sense of what's the median of the overall field. How do we compare against that? On the funder side, we're hearing from organizations that are using it as a part of their due diligence process that it adds another layer of analysis and often serves as a first starting place for where to then focus additional conversation and due diligence when talking with grantees and applicants. Again, the conversation piece is something that is common among all of these, that funders tell us that they're able to have conversations using data and the dashboard in particular as a starting place. Also thinking about doing the work in all of the grant applications that come through, we hear that Financial Scan saves folks time and resources. On the advisor side, also we hear from consultants, from accountants, and others who are working regularly with nonprofits that Financial Scan can provide a nice supplement of financial data to the additional content of the engagement and the ways that they're working together with their nonprofit clients. We're hearing that it's also a way for organizations to get a better understanding of who some of their prospective clients are, look at some of their recent dynamics, and come to those conversations better informed and better to meet the needs of those nonprofit clients. And of course, again, the same piece that the straightforward nature of generating reports saves time and resources for advisors as well. So with all of that said, I'll take just 1 minute before we go into the demonstration to note a couple of new features that we launched at the end of 2013 and that we're very excited about here at Nonprofit Finance Fund and GuideStar. The first is the ability to download both the peer comparison and the financial dashboard in Excel. So all of the data that you see on the online interface in those dashboards is now exportable to Excel, so that users can either add another year that might be more recent, or layer in some program data or capacity data that gives a more nuanced or another perspective on the organization's recent trends. So that's one that allows for a little bit more customization in the information that you see through Financial Scan. And again, it's available for both the peer and the trend dashboard, and we'll look at that. The other new feature is a new way to compare organizations. So we've always been able to identify groups side by side, looking at individual peer comparisons, excuse me. But now this new feature is the peer group comparison, which allows you to compare an organization to a broadly defined set of organizations using criteria such as geography, as revenue or expense or asset size, and subsector by virtue of NTE codes, and we'll take a look at that as well. The other two pieces are more about the access side of things. So we extended the length of the Nonprofit Express Pass. It was 3 days, it's now 7. So much more time to get more out of your report and compare to other organizations and other subsectors. And the customized enterprise access, as I mentioned, is a new access option that's available to groups that might want to have, they might have large staff, far-flung staff who would need to have reliable and simultaneous access to Financial Scan, and want to generate something that's a little bit more customized in terms of their way to enter into Financial Scan. So you can have a single point of entry for, say, all your staff on the intranet that we could customize for that particular situation. So another access option there as well. So all of that is to give the background information, but enough of me showing you slides and talking. Let's take a look at the analyses in action. Bear with me 1 moment while I pull up my web browser and share it with you all. So you should now be able to see the Financial Scan welcome page. Again, we're on GuideStar's website now, and I've logged in here and am at the starting blocks for generating a Financial Scan report. For the purposes of our demonstration, I'm going to pull up a Boys and Girls Club. And walk you through the process of generating a report so you can see what the look and feel is like and the kind of information that's available here. As we move through, you'll notice that this orange arrow is progressing us through each of the steps toward generating a full report. We've also got a few links up here at the top to some additional information, FAQs, and a glossary of terms. Also the ability to save reports if you have, an annual subscription. So I searched Boys and Girls Club, and I got 8,000 results here. The organization that I'm looking for happens to be in Denver, Colorado. But if I wanted to narrow my results because I didn't see the organization I was looking for here, I could use these filters to the right, and I'll do that on another search so you can see those. I'm going to select the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver, and it pulls up as a first stop the financial health dashboard. So here we've got some vital information about the organization at the top, including the mission statement and some links to the actual 990s themselves that are feeding into the data that we see here. So we also have the ability to, as I mentioned earlier, export this dashboard to Excel, or you could create a single-page PDF that just has this dashboard on it if that were a desirable format for you to use rather than generating the full report. I've also got some tooltips. You can hover over the information icons here to get some NFF perspective on what we're looking for and some of the vital signs and considerations for nonprofit financial health. But as you can see, we pull up to 5 years of available data. And you can get a sense of some of the trends over time. For example, contributed revenue has been an increasingly decreasing. A smaller part of the overall revenue mix for this particular organization, while other revenue has been growing, as has government grants. So maybe an interesting conversation there about the strategy behind that. You can also see the trends in the organization's growth. It's certainly an organization that's been growing. And can see that the organization has generated consistent surpluses on an unrestricted basis. One just quick note, we presented the profitability measure a little bit differently here, that normally you would see revenue less expenses giving you your profitability, your measure of surplus deficit. But we made the choice to actually measure profitability on the balance sheet, given one limitation of the Form 990 is that the revenue, whether unrestricted, temporarily restricted, or permanently restricted, is all commingled together in total revenue. And that commingling of restricted revenue can sometimes obscure the actual unrestricted performance of the organization in that year and what's really available for use to cover expenses in that year. To get around that, we chose to instead measure the change in unrestricted net assets, in this case before and after depreciation, to get a more accurate picture of an organization's operating performance in that year. Scrolling down, we've got our balance sheet indicators here on the composition of the balance sheet, so looking at some key line items from there, also providing a couple of percentages or ratios to look at liabilities as a percent of assets, and how much of the organization's land, building, and equipment might be accumulated or might be depreciated. And then we look at net assets on a restricted basis as well. Importantly, down at the bottom, we take 3 different looks at measures of liquidity, including months of cash, cash and investments, and estimated unrestricted liquid net assets. Each one provides a slightly different perspective and a slightly different nuance on liquidity measures, which give a sense of an organization's ability to withstand risks or challenges and respond to new opportunities. So next up, for the sake of time, I'm going to push us ahead and look for some peer organizations. Again, I'm going to search for Boys and Girls Clubs. And I want to see organizations in this case that are somewhere between 5 million and 10 million. And I'll actually do that on the next page so you can see that filtering feature. And I'll select up to 5 individual peers to add to my comparison report. So I've got 5 here. And the next step in the process is to select a peer group. So that was selecting individual peer organizations that we can compare side by side. And this next step is about defining a subsector or a peer group using these criteria. The search feature will then return the median value of that combined subset of organizations. So we'll be able to see a broader picture than just the individual peers in terms of comparison. Up at the top, we have some key information about our selected organization, the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver, so that we can use that as a guide, if helpful, for defining some criteria for our peer organizations. So I am going to look for other Boys and Girls Clubs, and I'm going to use the NTEE code here. Bear with me, which is a classification system that is self-reported, and you can find on the Forms 990. So I'm going to select all three of these codes, Boys Clubs, Girls Clubs, and Boys and Girls Clubs combined. I want to look at them across the United States, so I'm not going to select any geographic criteria, but I could if I wanted to. And I'm going to look at revenue between $5 million and $10 million and see what that gets us. So here I can see that there are 26 different organizations who met my criteria, and I could take a look at who is included in that sample. This is a random sample of those organizations, and it looks good to me. If I didn't like those results, or I thought that I wanted to make some changes, I could go back and generate a different peer group search by clicking this link. But I'm comfortable with it, so we'll go to the dashboard. And we will see in just a minute each of those different peer organizations and the median side by side. So at the top we have a key for identifying who is in which column, and also a link to their most recent fiscal data. We've also got the information that I selected to define my peer group criteria listed up here at the top, so I know exactly what I'm looking for in my peer group. My peer group is the far right-hand column where it says group, median, or average. And so this is taking the median for all 26 of those organizations and displaying those values across the same indicators that we saw on the financial health dashboard. Each of the individual peer groups is listed to the right of my target organization. And this peer median and peer average, this other one right listed in this column, actually reflects the median value for all 6 of these individual organizations. So peer median shows the median for these 6, whereas group median shows the median value for the peer group that we defined on the prior page. In this, this dashboard, as well as the prior one, there's a link again to definitions and formulas that can tell you where we're getting all of this information and help to interpret some of the data. So we're coming to the end of our time. So as we wrap up, I'll just pull up the PDF report so you can get a sense of what it looks like combined. You can print this. You can see here some of the different trends, looking at expenses, some more nuance here, looking at estimated full costs. And I'll just scroll through quickly. There are 13 graphs included, as well as both of the dashboards that we saw throughout generating a report. Okay, so I'm going to go back now to our PowerPoint deck and take a couple minutes to answer any questions that might have come in the last 20 minutes.
Thanks, Peter. A lot of questions just to remind everybody of the pricing of the 2 variants. And just to reiterate, the Express Pass, which is the version of the product where you can select a single target organization but run analyses with multiple sets of peers, that's $250, and you have access for 7 days to run as many of those analyses as you would like. And the annual subscription is where you can run, any number of reports for any number of target organizations, is $2,500. Looking through, do I need a GuideStar.org account to access Financial Scan? The answer is yes, but you can actually, if you purchase Financial Scan online on the GuideStar.org website, you can simply register at the same time, and that account is free. It's just so that you can get a username and password and be credentialed to subsequently access the product. And that's really about it. That's about all we have time for. It looks like we're just about at 3:30. Peter, thanks for taking the time to be here today. We really appreciate it. To all the audience members, if we didn't get to your question, please check our blog at trust.guidestar.org for additional answers. And watch out for the email coming soon with the presentation and the recording of today's presentation. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.